Welcome to the latest instalment for the Leadership Speaker Series. My name is Anthony Mitri and I have the pleasure of being your host for this afternoon, Blue Mountains. We're joined today by Lorraine Mercuri, who is currently the General Manager for the Mercure Sydney Airport, one of my favourite hotels in Sydney, by the way. I used to work there.
You're biased.
I am very biased. Really amazing opportunity to sit down and talk to Lorraine today. But before we get into that, there's a few welcomes that I need to make. Welcome to our campuses who are streaming live into Lura, our campus in Suzhou, our campus in Inti, and I believe there is a lucky person in Thailand watching this session as well. So welcome to you in Thailand. Lorraine, absolutely amazing CV. You've been the GM of some iconic hotels in Sydney. So you got Mercure Sydney Airport, of course. We've also got the GM at the Pullman, Sydney Hyde Park, all the Darling Harbour properties. You were an area GM for a cause Greater Sydney as well. And if that wasn't enough, you're actually the owner and operator of the North Beach Pavilion in Wollongong since 2012. Can I ask everyone to put your hands together and welcome Lorraine to today? Amazing CV. Let's start from way back. Why hotels? What kind of ignited that passion for you to work in hotels?
Sure. Well, I know I may seem very young, but I do have some years behind me.
No.
So, listen, I actually fell into hotels because when I was at university, I was studying Bachelor of Arts in Management and Languages and then a BCom in Marketing. And hospitality really wasn't in there, but I wasn't really thinking about hospitality at that time. I was working in hospitality with my second degree and fell into hotels. And enjoyed it so much, and I found that what I was actually studying at uni was actually also applicable in hotels. And then I was asked to apply for a corporate management traineeship, and I got it. So, and then the rest is history. So that then took me on a trajectory around Australia, and I haven't looked back since.
So I guess, how did your family take it? That you wanted to work in hospitality?
No, they were very supportive. I think they saw that I was very happy, that I was satisfied, that I was actually applying what I had studied as well. So it's not specifically about, and I'll make this point now very early on, is that hotels it's a commercial business. Yeah, it's not about only about hosting people, which is obviously central to being a hotelier, but it is about making money. Yeah, and it is about also analysing the economic climate. So I was able to do that and also apply my languages. I'm Italian background and I speak a little bit of French as well. So we're able to apply all of that. So it's very rare that an industry is able to allow you to do all of that.
Italian background, so hospitality is almost ingrained. You know, it's probably genetic.
Yeah.
What was Sunday afternoons at home like? You know, when you were growing up, was that hospitality experience there, wasn't it? Yeah, Sunday
afternoon, any Italian family or similar, cultures is you sit around the lunch table or dinner at night at 6 o'clock, 5:30 on the dot, and you had to be there, and you were there to eat, and sense of calm, and everyone hoeing in on the food on the table, but it was also a time for catching up during the course of the day and really spending really valuable time with family and friends. So that obviously absolutely extended, particularly in food and beverage, that certainly extends. And you'll find that also food and beverage in hotels is the heart and soul of hotels, and that's certainly the case also for Accor, but it is the heart and soul. Whilst there's profitability in rooms and also F&B, but F&B really is the heart and soul of a hotel business. So the two very much complement each other.
Absolutely. Now, what was your first job in the hospitality industry?
Well, this is before hotels. I was a little meek and mild waitress, and my first shift on a tray, I dropped literally, I know it sounds, but I think it must have been about 8 mixed drinks, so in tumblers,
Ooh.
you know, Scotch and Cokes and the whole thing. And I had Don Camillo, the owner, look at me, you know, and I was just dropped it all over the guests, literally quintessential. I thought I was fired, but, you know, I cried so much. I was, you know, all of just turned 18, so he felt sorry for me, so he gave me a job all the
Where
same.
was that at?
Down in the Gong, in
wow.
the Gong at that time, yeah.
And I guess that's pretty traumatic, dropping a tray of drinks on your first shift. How did you recover?
Listen, I cried, but I think it was so felt so sorry for me because I was trying. Then, you know, after that I tried so hard and I practiced every night, and I think the entire staff were sorry for me, including the chefs. So they gave me you know, they gave me a second chance. But I think also it's actually learning from a very early age that you make mistakes, you know, you bounce back, and you know, otherwise if you're afraid of making your mistakes, you're never going to get anywhere. So that was learnt fairly well on. I did have some other roles as well. I worked in fast food KFC for a while. I was always on the night shift because I was a really good cleaner. You know, we couldn't go out afterwards because we smell like chicken. So, you know, that was not good for my social life. And also other more reputable, not reputable, but certainly a la carte fine dining as well, until I actually fell into hotels. Yeah.
And what was the first hotel you worked at?
Down in Wollongong
as well?
Yeah, so it's sort of like a full circle. So my parents are down there, my father's ailing, so I've gone down there back to make sure that he's okay. But my first hotel there was Park Royal, North Beach Park Royal, which is now Novotel North Beach. And I was a banquet F&B attendant, then I became what we called a banquet captain, then a supervisor, as well as I was studying. And then I went down to a la carte, and I got to know the different chefs down there.
How was that? How was going from being banquets into a la carte? Because I know it almost sounds, you know. How was it?
It was. I remember I went down as a supervisor, and this is whilst I was studying. So I had this piece of paper with all of everyone's breaks, and you know, because we had the award, and so I had this piece of paper. It would have been my 4th shift, and I was in the middle of what we used to call the dance floor, and my manager just yanked it out of my hand. And this was in the middle of a Saturday night service. We had like 400 booked. It was, you know, in turnover. And I just froze, and she said, "You're just going to have to do it without the prompter. It's your 4th shift." So I just froze, and so I was thinking, you know, I had to remember everyone's shifts and who was in section 1, who was in section 2, you know, where were we up to, and entrees, mains, you know, so on, you know, table on the dance floor had an issue with their dessert, so it was all coming to me. So I was very, very stressed. But then I remember that night, and we set everything up for the next day because that was a Saturday night, and the next day we had forecasted about 600 covers. And so this was a time when everyone, if you're staying in a hotels, there weren't as many hotels as what there were today. So it was a real big thing staying in hotels at that time. You know, setting up that night, and I just remember that I went, wow, I've overcome my first hurdle in change from one department to the next. So it was a real big sense of accomplishment.
I guess how would you describe the hotels industry when you first started, and how would you kind of describe it now, and what's been the biggest shift?
Yeah, there's a huge shift in hotels. I need to highlight one thing, that you know, hotels are a business. Yeah, it's yes, there's glitz and glamour. There's checking people in and out, and you know, serving wonderful champagne or prosecco, whatever your poison is. But it is about making money. Many years ago, you know, you'd have hotel owners that you know, had it as a tax write-off, were very wealthy private investors, and it was really a trophy. Owning a hotel was a trophy, and certainly that was in a few of the hotels that I worked at, and I've worked in all brands of hotels, from luxury to economy. Yeah. So and also have had a dabble in budget as well. So it's very much changed. So we have different investors, different owners, and they all want a return on that investment. Yeah. So you might have private owners, you might have institutional owners, and those institutional owners might be a conglomerate of people that have shareholders and so forth. They might be publicly listed companies, or they might be joint ventures. And they want a return on their business because, of course, they've got, they've borrowed, some cases they've borrowed money, in many cases they've borrowed money in order to buy that hotel, so they need the hotel to return, obviously the interest payment on that. So that's the reality of behind the scenes, and that's why you need to also be a very fine commercial manager as well and understand the mechanics behind it. So that's probably the biggest shift. Along with that shift, though, has also been, when I actually know, before I started, used to check in manually. That was way before my time now. But when I started, we did have registration cards. We didn't, so when you made a reservation, you wrote it on a registration card or a reservation card, and you put it to the side, and then you put it in, the next step, you'd put it into the computer. So this was back in 1997, and I was at Twin Waters Resort, and I was a front office manager then, in charge of front office reservations, a whole heap of departments. And I remember we have to go live, and that meant booking straight into the computer without a paper. Everyone froze. We all thought we were going to go bankrupt. We all thought we were going to lose business left, right and centre because people were we didn't have any proof except in the computer that there was a reservation. Yeah. So that was the biggest, that was one thing. We had floppy disks at that time. Anyone know what a floppy disk is?
These guys are too young to know what a floppy disk is.
Yeah. So it's a flat looking CD floppy thing that goes into a computer, yeah? And that's what we used to download stuff on, yeah? It's not a USB, it's just a flat thing, yeah? So I thought we were really ahead of the time because we used to have, floppy disk folders, we thought we were really hip and happening.
Well, this was when you were also getting, bookings from your travel agents coming through fax machines.
Correct. We had fax machines. Before my time, there was telex. Yeah. So we had fax machines, and, our regional general manager used to handwrite beautifully handwritten documents to us. So nothing was on computer. So those things have changed. We used to have travel agents, obviously, that were manual travel. There was no third-party websites. There were no interfaces, so it was all very, very, very manual. We had hard keys, front door keys. So, it's changed quite a lot.
So what point did you go from food and beverage to front office? And how's that
traineeship, yeah.
I was through your traineeship?
Yeah, traineeship. Okay. So I was food and beverage for the first 4 or 5 years, 4 years in hotels. Previous to that, obviously, I'd worked in restaurants before. And then I did the traineeship, and the traineeship had me go around Australia 6 months at a time for 2 years. And I got exposure into larger operations in food and beverage, rooms, reservations, sales and marketing, finance, in Sydney, Melbourne, Perth and Queensland. So not only were you uprooted every 6 months, so this really tested you not only professionally but also personally, because you needed to uproot yourself, go to the next property, start all over again, learn new friends, know how to influence and communicate to people, as well as learn a new discipline. So it was there that I actually learned.
And this was with back then would have been SPHC?
Oh no, now it was Accor by that time, because I was SPHC
now.
for about 3 years, and then Accor took over.
Fantastic. Where does your heart lie, rooms or food and beverage?
Oh, both.
Both?
Yeah, I don't really have. I sort of call myself a commercial manager. So I love food. I love wine. I don't drink a lot of it, but I do like a good wine. I prefer prosecco. Sorry, Frenchies in the room. I prefer prosecco to champagne. But yes, anything anything good I like.
I'm going to let you sit on the fence. That's okay. I don't mind. I guess, how did your schooling, obviously you didn't study hospitality or hotel management, but How did your business schooling set you up for that first bit of your career, going into into food and beverage and then the traineeship and then rooms?
Yeah, I think the other thing, it's important to know that I also have family in Italy. My background's Italian, so I have, and my husband also is Italian. He's also the chef of the restaurant, so it might be a bit in the, might be a bit biased.
That helps.
His family also own, restaurants in Melbourne, so they own restaurants and they're chefs as well as front of house. So we have it in our family, but. In Europe, and I very much have a European, DNA, I suppose, as well. That obviously, Australia is a melting pot of, a lot of different cultures. So, naturally, it's fed through here to Australia. But in Europe, hospitality is very much has been for a very, very, very long time a strict discipline. So I suppose we had that in our DNA. But to your point, whether hospitality is, we know tourism is now tier 1 in Australian industry, the Australian economy. So tier 1 meaning it's an industry that is considered at the forefront of growth and of strength for Australia. So that is a big deal. And it is the biggest, continues to be the biggest growth industry for Australia. So that is very important for us to know that, and Asia Pacific is a strength within the global market. But I think the other thing as well is that hospitality today is certainly does focus as well on the business acumen, and that's applicable to all disciplines in university degrees. How many times have we had people, I know myself obviously, I wanted to become an economist or a diplomat in foreign affairs because I wanted something that could use my economics as well as my languages. Hotels actually do that, so it's an industry that is very transferable. It's an industry that enables, it's a very rich industry and enables a lot of different disciplines to be applied to that industry.
So those of you who hate your accounting class, I guess the message there is...
Oh, you need it,
You need it.
So listen, to be honest, quant methods, I don't know if you have that. Quant methods 1 and 2 and accountancy, management accounting is better. I prefer management accounting. Biz finance was a killer for me. So it was an 85% failure rate when I was doing it.
Wow.
So it was not great. But once you get into the industry, you'll actually understand that sort of stays with you and things make sense. CapEx, anyone know about CapEx, capital expenditure? You will, and that is applicable in hotels. Yeah.
There were some nods. I'm happy that some people nodded when you said who knows what CapEx is.
Well, I didn't know at your age either, and it really was foreign to me until, plus some years, and it will make sense. The penny will drop. Ah, that's what the prof was saying. Okay.
So we're now a GM, and what was the first property you were a GM at?
Canberra.
In Canberra.
So I was a 2IC 3 times. So to the women in the audience, gentlemen, you're just as important. Yeah. But I just thought I'd say something to the women as well, because women tend to, if there's 2 people going for a job, the guy will, I know 80% of the role, and they'll go for the role, But the female needs to know 120% of the role, in order to feel that they're appropriate for the role. And that was the same with me. So I chose to be a 2IC or an EAM, Executive Assistant Manager or Hotel Manager, so reporting to a GM for 3 properties, I didn't have to, but I did. It was a choice of mine because I wanted to know that 120%. You don't need to know 120% is what I'm saying to everyone, male or female. But I was an EAM for 3 years before I then went to Novotel Canberra as my first GM's role.
What pushed you over that edge to go, I'm ready now? What was there a moment, or was there a
No, no, there wasn't a moment. I think there was. I was just tapped on the shoulder to say, listen, we've got this role, and we think you'd be great for it. Great for it. So, and they needed someone with fairly sound experience as well, because it was outside of the comforts of Sydney. Yeah, so it was one hotel, and we had 2 hotels in Canberra then. We've got about 4 now. So you really needed someone with a lot of strength behind them, which I had at that time because I was an EAM for three different properties, to build that strength.
Were you ready?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was overcooked.
Good.
Yes.
What was the first 12 months like?
First 12 months was very exciting, great, daunting at the same time. It's sort of like, you know, when people say, and I used to say the same thing, you know, I run the operations, I run the hotel, I'm the EAM. My GM's only there in the office and, you know.
Signing the checks.
Signing the checks.
Yep.
But I run the operations. It's not until you actually have your own business unit, as I call them, your own hotel, that you then realise the weight of the responsibility. It's excitement, but it's also the weight. Not that I want to compare myself with Donald Trump. However, if anyone saw the interview with Donald Trump, when the first interview with Jane Walters, you know, he wasn't as excited. He was sort of like, yes, I'm now the president.
Yeah.
I don't think he believed it. That's probably what it felt like, but in a better way.
Some people still don't believe it.
Yes, some people still don't believe it. Yeah.
So 12 months was exciting, scary, all at the same time. What about day one? Talk us through day one. What did you do? Your first day as a GM?
Okay, so a bit of insight. Before you become a GM, you normally are given the numbers of the hotel. So you know where it's tracking, you know its market segments, you know the staffing levels, you know its strengths and its weaknesses, SWOT analysis, you know the competitors. So you know the landscape. You've done some homework because you've gone through the interview process and so forth as well. So you know the business, yeah, as theoretically. Day one is about, wow, you know, this is the excitement that this is my hotel, that I've been given the opportunity to run a full business unit. And then you get introduced to the staff, and you see the hotel run it in all its glory, you know the numbers, you know the structure, but now you're seeing it in real life, and you're meeting everyone. You're the person that does that. You're the FC, you know, financial controller. You're the sales and marketing. You're the director of sales and marketing. You're the one that brings the business in. So it's a wonderful day to get to know everyone and really make that fantastic first impression. So it's really exciting.
Is day two any scarier, or does it get easier
No,
as you go?
It wasn't scary at all. It was excitement. It was pride. When it starts getting, I suppose, the penny starts to drop is when you get your first problem. Yeah, when for some reason.
Do you remember what your first problem was?
In Canberra, no, I don't actually. It was just so long ago. It was so long. No, but I do recall that I'm a bit competitive, so I do recall saying, okay, how can we reposition the hotel? So how can we, you know, look at improving ourselves, you know, our position in the marketplace? And that's through, I'm not sure whether you understand, I'm sure you do understand the key performance indicators, revenue per available room. You know, we certainly also submit, at that time it wasn't STR, which is today. We used to submit our rates to the AHA, so all the night managers used to submit the rates, and you get the report in the morning and say, oh, where did I sit? Yep. And then during that time we transitioned to STR, and STR is a company that where you submit, it's an interface where you submit your revenues, your occupancies, and your average rate. And it then tells you where you sit blindly, because you don't know anyone else's numbers, because that would be collusion. So you then get to understand where you sit in the marketplace. So I think when I started asking questions about how we can improve our position in the marketplace, that's when we started asking those tough questions, and things started getting a bit tougher.
So Canberra, how long were you at Canberra for?
Oh, 2.5 years, I think, 3 years. Yeah. What
was after Canberra? What came next?
Oh, actually, I should say with Canberra, because this was in 2004, 2005. Some of you would have been, all of you would have been in primary school, I think. So some may not. But this is when unemployment rate in Australia was 3%. No unemployment. Yeah. in Canberra, 25% or 24% of the population is hired by the government. Yeah, so that's what you're up against from an employment perspective, a recruitment perspective. So the biggest challenge for Canberra was trying to attract people, because of course you go to the government, you've got great benefits and so forth there as well. So it was trying to, if I had to say, the biggest challenge for Canberra was trying to get the right people in the right places and the right positions to sustain that business. Yeah, so recruitment became a really big issue. So yeah, that's probably.
And that was mainly coming in from Sydney and Melbourne and anywhere else, or
what, the business or the?
No, your staff.
Oh, staff from there, but funny you should say that. There was a time that we had, I just used, and that's the other thing, when you're entrepreneurial, yeah, and when you're you've got to start thinking on your feet as well. So you call your network of people, and I did in the company, to say, right, I need 2 chefs here. I need an F&B, 2 F&B attendants here. I'm going to have them stay overnight. We're going to put it on the P&L. We're going to do this, and that. And so I needed to create a bit of a working bee of people from interstate in order to get things done during that period.
And this is the days before Seek. You could just go on and advertise. Advertise a job.
Oh yeah. Seek. Yeah. Way before Seek.
So what was after Canberra?
After Canberra, I actually, well, funnily enough, so after Canberra, I was then promoted to area manager. So I went to, which was a really big surprise. I was area manager at Greater Sydney, based at Sydney Olympic Park Hotels. I'd already been EAM there. So I was there for about 3 years, and that was taking care of the Sydney Olympic Park properties, Novotel and Ibis at that time, Formula One, which is now Ibis budget. We were opening or scheduled to open the Pullman at that time, and then also Parramatta, Newcastle and Thornlea. So that was the Greater Sydney sort of market. And that was great. That was a real eye-opener. So
for the audience, what's the difference between a general manager and a regional general manager?
Yeah. Okay, so as you go up the ladder, I suppose, and I should preamble that just to let everyone know, I'm no longer an area manager, because in 2008, 2009, we had the GFC. Does everyone remember the GFC? Yes, maybe, yeah. Lehman Brothers, yeah, not good. It was a really tough time. So what the company did, and rightly so, we had to really, I suppose, cull down the layers within the company. So then I moved to Darling Harbour as a general manager then of the complex there. So all of the area managers were taken out, not because we weren't performing, we were, but we needed to then restructure the company in such a way that it became sustainable during that GFC period. Yeah, so that's just a bit of information for you about what companies do and what we need to do in order to make sure that we're all on the same page, to make sure that the company and the business units move. Yeah, so that's just to let you know there. So, so from an area, as you go up, area manager, and then from area manager, it's regional manager, or as we call them now, VPOs, Vice President Operations for New South Wales and ACT. The further up you go, the more strategic your role becomes, and it becomes a high-level stakeholder management. So what we mean by stakeholders is the owners of the hotel, keeping them happy, keeping guests happy, keeping your colleagues happy, keeping Accor happy that you are a good representative of the company, making sure that if you are dealing with governments and state organisations, that you are a responsible commercial partner for them as well. So as you go up the ladder, that's the landscape, I suppose, that you're playing in. Yeah, so you become more of an ambassador and a strategic negotiator.
Wow. So this is the kind of trajectory that these students want to go. They eventually want to be GMs, but I guess the next step is then that VPO type position. And they obviously still exist now. So you've gone from Canberra to Olympic Park. You've got area manager there, Darling Harbour, and then I'm
Pullman.
guessing Pullman.
Yeah.
So
So
that's you're now in that 5-star category.
Yeah.
Is that your first 5-star property?
no, I'd worked at Sofitel Melbourne and Sofitel Sydney as well. So
Okay.
the beauty with Accor and companies similar to Accor is that we cover the entire customer gamut, from budget, which is IBIS budget, right through to Sofitel. And last year we also took over the Raffles, Swiss Hotel and Fairmont Group. So the CEO of that group is also here this week with our chairman Michael Eisenberg in Asia. So that's to obviously expand our luxury footprint globally. So to your point at Pullman, no, it wasn't my first one. Then that was one of the reasons why I was placed there. Was you know, the GM there and I had done a bit of a swap, because that was a Mirvac hotel, so we needed to still, I suppose, it was still in transition, moving from different systems to the Accor systems, and it was my role there to really reposition it. So that's a bit of my strength in repositioning business units.
So we're going to talk about change management, and I guess having been through a couple of rebrandings of properties, it can be quite intimidating, particularly when someone else is coming in and going, right, this is how you're going to do stuff now, and this is almost who you are, and this is who we want to be as a hotel. What were some of the challenges going through repositioning that property from a Mirvac to an Accor property?
Yeah, I think the company did, first of all, it was driven by, we did have a integration team, so well before I was at that property. So, you know, Accor really spent, I think, a good year and a half, 2 years communicating to the new company as well, that this is what we were going to do, communicating to the owners, this is what Accor is all about. So in Australia, that integration was actually really quite, I think, thoughtful. And we really took our time. But naturally things, you know, with change management, and I think it's one thing I think that your generation, and certainly I'm Gen X, started with my generation, that we're used to change. Yeah. So that change, I think, was taken pretty well. The older you were, you know, the tougher the change, because you're sort of set in your own ways. But I think the most important thing is that with our company, I think you learn to care for the individual, you learn to care for the processes, and then you learn to also communicate very effectively the reality of what we need to be doing moving forward. So to that mind, in change management, it's not only about having a focus and a vision, but it's also how you communicate that and how you plan that. So change management is about planning, is about communication, and it is about organisation.
The Accor's been through a lot of change. How do you almost keep up with it? Because being a dynamic organisation, you've got to keep up with the times. But I guess as a manager, how do you maintain your knowledge on trends, and how do you bring that into your role as a GM to make sure that your hotel is, you know, almost staying in front? Yeah,
I think good question. I think Accor in particular, and I'm probably well versed to actually know this more than most. Our first hotel was Novotel Sydney Darling Harbour, so many of you will not remember, but it was the first, prior to 1991, there was 5-star hotels or motels. You know, very, very few 4-star, you know, no 3-star. There were motels or 5 stars. So 1991 came, Novotel Darling Harbour was born. It was, everyone's saying, this big ugly, you know, pyramid on the other side of the ditch, Piermont, but our chairman at the time, Mr. Bafsky, was quite a visionary, and Piermont was the boondocks. Piermont was the boondocks then, and essentially we've extended the CBD of the Sydney CBD. Yeah. So that was the first hotel that was really a mid-scale 4-star hotel. That was the first one in the Australian economy. Since then, we've just skyrocketed. And of course, there's been a lot of other companies that have taken suit, in Australia, that have followed suit rather. So at that time, that was the first one. When I joined, I was at the Park Royal in Wollongong, and then Accor took us over, as well as a portfolio of Westpac portfolio, so another 4 hotels. By the time I was up in head office, and that was in 1998, we had 46 hotels, and now we have over 300 in that 25-year period. That's an enormous growth, and that's because we cover the entire customer gamut. But with that, how do we change? The key with change is it's the path of least resistance. You just go through, its physics, path of least resistance. So if you look at, get some water, put it on a, on a surface, the water will find the path of least resistance to get through. That's flexibility. So Accor, we are very, very flexible in order to move with the times. So therefore, our people have become very flexible, and as a result of that, we've become very, very determined and very resilient to change. Sorry, not resilient to change, resilient because we accept change and we go with the flow. And that's been, for us, I think, with the onset of Airbnb, with, third-party websites, with amalgamation of those websites, the increase in competition from, service departments now and so forth that are also biting into an increase in the competition. We kind of roll with the punches. Say, okay, well, we accept that. Let's learn from them, and let's take from what they're doing. We've got Airbnb. Our chairman in Paris, Sébastien Bazin, has decided that we diversify and compete through one fine stay. So that is an Airbnb, but in the luxury market. And watch this space, because it won't stop there. So I think that's the way that we've been able to manage it.
So I'm hearing good leadership. I'm hearing visionary leadership. That someone at the top or a group of people at the top are saying, this is the direction we're going, and then getting people to almost come on that journey with them. I hear a lot of students enroll talking about, I want to work in a 5-star hotel, or I want to work in a luxury hotel, and that's where I want to go. What are the challenges in working in those luxury brands as opposed to perhaps working at a Mercure or a Novotel? What's the biggest difference?
Let me just preamble that by saying I could quite easily say that I just want to work in luxury. I could have quite easily said that many, many years ago. Would I have the experience that I have now? Or would I be, where I am now? Because, for me, there's lots of opportunity for me, because I see things from a commercial aspect, not necessarily from a brand aspect. I don't think I would have actually had the same opportunity. So, luxury is fabulous. Mid-scale is fabulous, and economy is fabulous. Each one teaches you something very, very different, and each one adds a feather in your cap. So don't think that one is better or worse than the other, because it's not. 5-star is fabulous. Obviously you've got all the bells and whistles. The luxury products. It's about attention to detail. But regardless of whether you're in luxury, mid-scale or economy, it is that balance between service and profitability. As you go up in luxury, yes, revenues are higher. Profit necessarily is not always higher, because there's a lot more costs that are involved in that. But you learn about detailed service. As you go into mid-scale and budget, you actually learn about the mechanics behind things. So it might be, instead of 5 people doing the same thing, it might be 1 or 2 people doing 5 different things, and you actually get to know finance, you get to know sales and marketing, you get to know the operations a lot more. And in actual fact, many of our managers, who are some of the most successful managers, not only in our company, but in many other companies and in many other industries, have actually oscillated between that mid-scale, budget and luxury market, because they learn the entire gamut of service and of commercial acumen. Does that make sense?
Totally, totally. I want to talk about my favourite hotel now, which is the Mercure at the airport. And look, I try and encourage as many students to get out and work at an airport property, because if you think you know hotel management, if you think you know service management, you don't know anything until Qantas calls you and says there's 150 people coming over in the next hour.
That happened today, 63.
There you go. So tell us about an airport property and some of the challenges you face on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to, at a normal CBD property.
Okay. So at an airport property, as Anthony just explained, we could have delays as we have today. So there'll be an airline, there could be an intermediary, such as Travel Alliance, that will call and say, listen, we need 100 rooms. Yeah, so those 100 rooms will come piecemeal or drip drab during the day. Sometimes they'll come in a big bus,
and sometimes they'll come unattended, unannounced.
Unannounced. You have worked at the airport. They will come unannounced. They won't have any paperwork with them. You are the problem solver.
Yep.
You need to resolve that. Yep. And then you've got finance on the other side saying to you, okay, have we got the paperwork for it? Because otherwise they're not going to pay up.
Yep.
So, you've got all of that pressure to not only welcome a guest, make sure that the rooms are ready for them, because sometimes it's just instantaneously, but we've also got to make sure that obviously everything is reconciled. But it's not only that, it could also be then in an airport hotel, we will have people, what happens when people arrive and depart, they've come back, long flight, or, they're just about to, if they've come back from a long flight, they're a bit grumpy. If they're just about to go to Disneyland or go to Paris or Rome, they're excited. So you normally you will welcome people in various states of mind. Yeah, that's in every hotel, but in airport hotels it's particularly varied. Yeah, and that really is fantastic experience, because when you're a hotelier and when you're working through the ranks as well, you also do get to understand and be very perceptive to the person in front of you. Do I have a corporate guest in front of me? Do I have a delayed guest? If it's a corporate guest, they just want efficiency, formal acknowledgement, efficiency. Who's paying the bill? Where's the restaurant? Where's my room? Where's the gym? That's it. Okay. If you get crew, you might have people from, airline crew coming in. We've just been working for 24 hours on a flight from Paris or from Singapore. Our pilots need to sleep. We need the rooms ready now. And absolutely, there's your room, there's your allowance. Good evening, off you go. Then we've got our conference guests. Where's the conference? Oh, where is this? Where are the amenities? So you've got to know that as well. Yeah, and then you've got our leisure guests, and leisure guests, wow, where is everything? Oh, how much is this and how much is that? Because they're paying for it. It's not a company that's paying for it. So you've got to be a bit more amiable to those people as well, as opposed to a corporate guest who may just want efficiency. So there's a lot of psychology in hotels as well to actually understand the person that's in front of you.
And look, I guess the thing that I took away from working in an airport property is that you're exactly right. You learn so much because you're dealing with a variety of different market segments. You're dealing with challenges that you probably wouldn't even get at another property. On a Sunday night at a CBD hotel, you're walking in at 50% occupancy, you're going home at 52% occupancy. But an airport property can go from 50% to 100%, just like that.
Correct.
And you probably got to be a really good communicator. I mean, when you're working the front desk, you've got to make sure housekeeping know how many rooms you need. You've got to make sure chef knows that there's people coming in and at what time.
That is absolutely. Chef, we've got 63 people. He knew this morning. We've got 63 people coming. When are they arriving? We've got actually, funnily enough, you'd be very proud, we've actually got a WhatsApp group with our department head. And that's how I got it. So I was driving up. It was when it was a red light. I'm like, ding, oh dear, okay. So, team called me, yes, chef's aware, yep, everything's fine. So we're, us department heads are all WhatsApping each other to say, right, they're coming, 63 coming, There's going to be 20 coming at this time, another 40 coming at that time, another 3 coming at that time. Chef's been made aware, we've got the rooms available and so forth. So it's coordination. And that's great because you actually also learn about teamwork and valuing each other's discipline as well. Yeah.
So here's my competitive bit. When I was out there, we were the number one choice for the delays. How's it changed now that Regis is there? Because I mean, Regis is like bang,
right on there,
right in the airport.
Yeah,
Yep.
It's not only it's actually not only Regis. It's a lot. What year were you there again? You were there in you were there in 06.
Yep.
So that's a long time ago.
Showing my age.
You must have been 7.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you.
So a long time ago. So at that time, yes, because our hotels, our hotel was built in, I think it opened in 1981. So it was the only airport hotel at that time. But since then, now we've got about 7 or 8 hotels there. So it's not only Regis, but yes, they're right there. They have a lot of business, but also a lot of just layover leisure and corporate business that stay there. So we get a lot, but you've got to remember that the airport has got a lot of business coming in. We've got a lot of inbound business coming in. So now there's all these new airlines and so forth. So just because there's a lot more competition, you've got to understand why there's a lot more competition. Why are people building? Because there's demand. So the business is there. So it kind of, ebbs and flows and it works out, But it is about, to that point, it is also about understanding your market segments. So where we may have had at that time, perhaps 30% of our market mix may have been delayed business. It may not be 30% now. Our delayed business, I think, is about probably about 8%. Because we've got crew, we've got conferencing, we've got a lot of conferencing, we've got corporate and government business there as well. Because you've got to remember that people as well come into Sydney and say, you know what, our corporate offices are all here, but I've got an international contingent, an interstate contingent. We may as well conference at the airport, and then we'll go out to the city and play. So it's business changes and people's demands changes and the purchasing behaviour changes. So we've got to move with those changes.
Big buzzword that's been around hotels for a long time is revenue management. Everyone's talking revenue. I guess I want to kind of loop back to your times out at Olympic Park and perhaps where you are now. How important is revenue management when it comes to having your big events like your NRL Grand Finals? We won't talk about Bledisloe and how that's going, but State of Origin, Easter Show, all that kind of stuff that happens. How important is revenue management?
Okay, well, it's a bit of a close thing to my heart.
Ooh, okay, let's
when
go.
I was after my traineeship, I actually had a stint up in head office for a year. Before I was front office manager at Twin Waters Resort, so I was special project manager, so quality assurance manager, and yield management.
Yeah, right.
So revenue manager, many years ago, the discipline was called yield management. Does anyone know that? Did anyone know that? Yes, very good. Excellent. So we only started yield management, I'll call it revenue management now, probably about 20 years ago. But the airlines have been doing it since the 70s. So it's 1978, I think it was. I remember because I did a whole dissertation on it. I even had training, and it used to be called the weighted average rack rate. I had transfers. Does anyone remember overhead projectors and transfers? Anyone know? The teachers would know. Some of the teachers. So yes, okay, you must have been 3. So what we used to do, we used to type something up on on the computer, and then we used to photocopy it on a transparent sheet, and then we'd put it on an overhead projector. I've even got the book. So I did it. Anyway, so it is dear to my heart. How has it changed? It is revenue management today is very, very, very important. And it is an amalgamation of what you're studying now about, I suppose, break-even analysis, in economics, when we are talking about, your accounting, management accounting and so forth, our RevPAR, revenue per available room as opposed to revenue per occupied room. So there's a lot of things. And also, does anyone know ARI, MPI and RGI, so Revenue Generation Index, Market Penetration Index.
Some are nodding.
Yeah. Study it, because it's really easy. You'll get it. It is easy, yeah? And all it is, it's a ratio that tells you, it's a key performance indicator that tells you how you're going in your average rate within the market segment, within the market, and how you're going with your occupancy. So that's been absolutely forefront in hotels. So much so that Accor and IHG, I must say, IHG implemented dynamic pricing. Flexible pricing. We implemented dynamic pricing, and what that is was essentially like the airlines. We'd have some people or some market segments would have fixed pricing, which is fine. You know, we contract that rate to a corporate guest. Then, as you know, from What If, you'll see one day, or Trivago, one day it might be, $110. Another day, the same room might be $310. Who's ever stayed in a hotel in the city on New Year's Eve? Anyone? You have.
It's shocking.
It's shocking.
You do it once, you never do it again.
Yeah, and you do it once, and you do it with your entire family, including your extended family, because you're all staying in that one room to afford it. Yeah. So, and that's because the demand outstrips supply. So when demand outstrips supply, the price goes up. When supply outstrips demand, the price goes down. So, to your point about event days, so what we do, and some companies or business units might be different, but obviously we forecast. We forecast what the demand's going to be like, and we price accordingly. But that also is dependent upon the calibration of the last 3 years of historical data in order to forecast the purchasing behaviour moving forward. So to that point, what we tend to do is we know that, okay, New Year's Eve, or
grand final,
that's it, grand final. Okay, well, we want, because we're an airport hotel, so we want to get base business. We don't want to be too greedy. We want to get base business and go for stay through or minimum length of stay. So we will price low in order to get base business, and then we will crescendo up as we get closer to the day. Yeah. Sometimes what happens, however, particularly in the city, is that you might get a last minute cancellation. So that means that last minute cancellation, there will be cancellation clauses, no doubt. But then that hotel may have another 20 rooms in the last 24 hours that they can sell. They can choose to sell it at a high rate, or they can choose to sell it at a low rate, depending on what their strategy is about, do I want to fill or do I just want to yield? Yeah. I don't want to get into too much because you might glaze over, and I don't want you to fall asleep. But yeah, so it just depends. But certainly it is all about analysing historical data and then forecasting effectively moving forward and pricing accordingly.
Being a GM now is becoming more and more. It's a business. You keep saying it. It's a business, and I guess the hotelier has changed from being a host to now being a business leader and being kind of wearing that commercial hat, hasn't it? Absolutely.
So when I do recall when I first started in hotels, I used to admire my GM. All of those champagne dinners. It was fabulous because I'd be serving him. Yeah. I'm pretty good at opening a wine bottle, even the champagne bottles. I served a lot of those. But I also used to recall, because sometimes business dinners, depending on who the client is, you're talking business over the dinner table sometimes. So I do actually recall, even long ago, that you'd sign a deal, and so a contract would come out. But that's a lot more these days than what it was then, because of those reasons why I said before that the owners of hotels have now changed. Superannuation funds now invest in hotels, so they need a return to pay dividends to their investors, So therefore there is that pressure that every month, or you need to deliver. Just like you might have exams 2 or 3 times a year, we have exams once a month. Yeah, so we need to explain, but it's an assessment exam. It's not a 1 hour, 3 hour, well, written exam. Do you still write in exams? No, it's just all.
No,
yeah,
they do.
you still
They do.
write.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
wow, okay. There you go. So we have assessment exams at the end of every month.
I mean, we were talking backstage a little earlier about your day today. I mean, you were at an investor meeting. I mean,
Yeah, so I had to speak to some investors today as well. So just, about, I suppose, redevelopments and so forth as well, whether it's worth our while to add more rooms or develop other rooms. Would that cannibalise the other rooms? So what we mean by cannibalisation is, would developing extra rooms mean that it would take the revenue away from other rooms? So, we're talking about those things, and if however many $1 million of investment, what is the return on investment going to be? So, how long before I get those investors get a return on what they've invested? So, and that's what happens today.
Yeah.
We might have those, Lorraine, can you just, look at your, run your eyes through these numbers and see if they make sense. We might look at that and say, okay, well, that's a bit of a trend going up or down. Maybe we can improve this, maybe not that. Do we want to put a rooftop bar up here? Maybe not, because economies of scale may not be good. Does anyone know about economies of scale or efficiencies? Yeah?
a lot more nods there. Great.
Yeah, good. So you actually do. Everything that you're learning is applicable to hotels as they are today.
So earlier you talked about, young ladies having to know 120% of the job.
No,
before,
that's what we naturally
or you think that you
Yeah,
need
that's what
to,
we
not
think
you
we
have
need.
to. You
No.
think. You're a member of Women on Boards.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and what some of the work that you actually do there?
So that's one of, I attend it, not so much work it, but I'm certainly part of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are a lot of associations like that essentially they focus on balancing the gender balance within the workplace, but particularly on boards. So this is not something, and I don't want to, I'm very conscious, about men and women, and I don't want this to be a he versus she, but rather he for she. That's another movement. It is about helping other women communicate and have the confidence to say, yes, I am good enough to be on a board. I am, having the confidence, I suppose, to say, near enough is good enough, and I am worthy just as the person next to me. Women tend to feel that a little bit more than men, but I'm not saying that men don't either. All we're asking for is a bit more equality within the higher ranks, as well as particularly on boards. Women and men do think differently, and both are equally as important. Yeah, so that's very, very important. So men tend to be very focused, tunnel vision, and that's great because they just get the job done, because women tend to be a little bit more emotional about things, don't they? But women tend to, and I may be overgeneralising here, get into the minutiae of things. And that's really important as well, because they're critical thinkers as well, because they might think of things that perhaps the chap next to them hasn't thought about, but they might get lost in the detail. So you need both. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that's why it's really, really important to have that diversity in the boardroom or in any management team.
Now, before we open up to the audience, I just want to talk a little bit about your entrepreneurial hat that you wear as well.
Oh, yes.
So you own your own restaurant.
Yes.
Where do you find the time, and what drove you to kind of going, yep, I want to do this and own a restaurant?
Yes. One word, husband.
Ah.
Yes. So couple of things. So he's a chef, but he also owned his own weaving company in Italy. So he
Which company?
Weaving. Yeah.
Wow.
So Luca, where's Luca? So north in Piedmont in Italy. That's where Valentino and all of the fashion houses are. So and it's about 1,500 metres above sea level. So there's a lot of businesses there that weave the weave for fabric.
Wow.
Because it's low humidity, very good, very good water and so forth. So he had an artisanal weaving company with his father, and they decided to sell as they were invited by some Asian companies to go over to Asia and train Asian companies how to weave. So they sort of saw the writing on the wall, so they sold up. And he came to Australia and, of course, met me, and, the rest is history. But, obviously he also had family here, and they're all restaurateurs and both front of house and also chefs. Mm-hmm. So he started, cooked in Italy, but also started cooking here commercially as well. Yep. And then we decided we went for a tender. So between his, knowledge of food and my commercial knowledge, because I obviously drove the tender process. It was a very competitive tender, and we won it. So he wanted to do it. He was following me around the countryside, so I thought, okay, give and take. It's a partnership. So we decided to do that.
Tell us about North Beach Pavilion. Because I've seen the menu's just amazing. But
so it's this fantastic pizza restaurant. Pizza bar and restaurant on the beach in Wollongong, right on North Wollongong Beach. So, and with that, food trend. So why pizza restaurant? Pizza on the beach. Who doesn't want pizza on the beach, yeah? Yeah. And that's and it is authentic Neapolitan, so obviously that harks back to, my mother is from near Naples, so there's a bit of authenticity there. Wow. So there's a story behind everything. But then to that, obviously, it's about trends. And Australia, and particularly Sydney, I think there was Sydney versus Melbourne for a very long time with food. Mm-hmm. Melbourne did food and does food fantastically well. It was always thought that Melbourne did medium really well and Sydney did high-end and basic really well. That's changed obviously over the years, and there's been a lot of pizza restaurant coming through, particularly over the last 5 years. My husband decided we started doing that before the bit of the trend really started catching wind, and to that, the trends, people are wanting to eat well. They don't want to spend a lot of money, but they want to eat well, and they want to eat authentically. Yeah, and we see that as well. Whilst yes, we might go to McDonald's or we might go to to Aria's for that special occasional dinner. But everyone is also eating out a lot as well. So we look around here. There's lots of takeaways. There's lots of. I was just walking past here, going, "Gosh, I didn't know this was up. Oh my gosh, I didn't know that this was up." But Sydney also has that critical mass. So it is about also making sure that you have a location, that you're looking at trends, that you've got critical mass as well, that you're able to feed. Because there's no point in having a venue that hasn't got critical mass. And what I mean by critical mass, I mean the population to actually sustain it.
Last question from me. Is it not a source recipe, or have you guys made your own recipe?
Oh, yeah, it is a bit. Yeah, there's a couple of recipes there that are family recipes and also from Max, but we've also created a lot. My husband, he was saying, okay, he's getting into vegan now. So, vegan sweets, vegan bread, vegan everything. So, and I'm the guinea pig. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, look, I'm going to open it up to the audience now. If anyone in the audience has a question, feel free to volunteer to put your hand up now and ask. There's a couple of roving microphones that'll come around and.
I probably said too much.
Oh, we've got a question up the back. Look at that, great teamwork. Well done, guys.
Hi. Oh, this is weird. Have you had any experience in other departments apart from food and beverage and obviously HR? Did you do any housekeeping or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So did housekeeping as well. Tough. Tough. Yeah, and it's really, really important to understand it. Sorry? Absolutely, and it's tough. So, it's, and I say the same thing with that, and also kitchen hand as well. Yeah, they are the epicenter. Yeah, so I did housekeeping, and I still go in there in housekeeping, and if we you know, I'm a very big believer that, you know, in egalitarianism and so forth as well, that everyone gets in there and gets their hands dirty in order to have an outcome. So yes, I spend a lot of time in housekeeping, but you've got to actually get your hands dirty and understand housekeeping, how many rooms per hour, you know, how many minutes per room and so forth, in order for you to make the decision on, you know, the cost of per occupied room, and also understanding, well, why is the quality the way that it is? What's the cost? How much do we do in training? What's our workers' compensation? So all of that's very, very, very critical, because people stay in hotels, they stay in rooms. So if we don't have the rooms and they're clean, then we're shot. So yes.
Have you ever had a part in your career where you thought you'd want to start your own hotel or anything like that?
Yes, people. Funnily enough, I've also had people approach me about that. Yes, I'm just got a lot of on my plate at the moment, but yes, I have thought about that. So I think particularly in Europe, because there's, you know, French. There's a lot of my sister-in-law's French, so le gîte, which is a, you know, sort of 9 or 10 room sort of pensioni. That's Italian. So, you know, I've got family in Europe as well that have got, you know, the pensioni. So, but yes, I have thought about it, and I think, you know, never say never.
It's almost a retirement plan, right? Get yourself.
It's not a retirement plan.
No,
it's not a retirement. But listen, it does. You know, yes. If again, it's about location, doing it right. Making sure that your numbers speak well, it's in a good position, you've got the right personnel coming in. So you've got to have all of those ducks in a row in order to make it flow.
Amazing. Any other questions? Oh, here we go.
So, in your opinion, what are some of the most important characteristics in a leader?
Okay.
Characteristics. Very good.
Characteristics in a leader. Okay. So I think, depending on what leader you want to be, but I certainly think leadership is about not dragging people to an end, but inspiring them to come. Now that might seem, I don't want that to seem romantic either, you know, profess on a mountaintop and then everyone comes. Yeah, it's not about that. Yeah, that's not inspiration. Inspiration is also about being realistic and sometimes just talking plain talk. So you build that trust. So whether you're in good times or bad, your team is saying, yeah, I want to be with you. Yeah, because I know that we will take care of each other. Yeah, and so behind leadership there needs to be that authenticity, I think, and there needs to be that trust. So there are a lot of characteristics, but I think authenticity and trust are very, very important. I think you need to be able to touch people as well, and that doesn't mean that you're soft, and that doesn't mean touching as in touching. That means you know really speak to the heart, because then when you have tough conversations. Yeah, tough conversations. Anyone had a tough conversation? That means, you know, might be a disciplinary talk, you know, might be a discussion that we need to meet. That's okay. I had a written warning many, many years ago. I know it's hard to believe, but I did.
Just one?
Yeah, just one. And and I deserved. I was working in a 5-star hotel, and I perhaps drank a little bit too much at the Christmas party than what I should have. Yeah. So we all make these mistakes. Yeah. But, you know, I'm a better person for it. Yeah. Because I also was in a position of leadership. But I think it is when you have tough conversations as well, your team know that it's coming from a constructive place, not from a destructive place. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think that's really, really good advice, particularly the authentic bit, you know.
Yeah.
As a manager, you've got to be true to yourself before you can be true to your teams. Yep, we've got a question. Hang on, wait for the mic.
Oh.
It's coming.
Thank you for being here. You have a room full of millennials here.
Yes.
What advice would you give the millennials in the room to build that inspiration and that resilience to stay and succeed in such a diverse and evolving industry like hotels and hospitality?
Yeah, very good question. Listen, I think you know, there's always that. I think there's a couple of things, you know, and if I could take, because I was in your shoes once. Yeah, I remember sitting in a department head meeting, and I was the youngest department head. Everyone was a baby boomer, and I was the only Gen X. Yeah, so everyone was looking at me. You're the one you're the upstart. You're the, you know, all of this. I'm like, oh, you just don't understand me, you know. I get it. Yeah, so that's part of the generational gaps, I suppose. But I think today's things have changed so much, particularly with technology, yeah, and Facebook and everything else. And I know we're always on Facebook and we're always on Instagram and Twitter and all the rest of it. And my brain fries. So I don't know how yours is because you've grown up with it, but my brain fries. So I think, you know, Juliana, what you were saying about resilience and grit, look up the word grit, because that is really, really, really important. You do need to sometimes, it's okay to travel the road less travelled. You don't have to do what everyone else does all the time. Be confident in what you say, but learn first. You don't know everything. I didn't know everything, even though I thought I did. Yeah? You don't know everything. Learn from others, and you might not agree with it. So you're learning what not to do. You're learning what not to do, and you're learning what to do. Yeah? So you're picking and choosing, but you know, just sit back and learn. I think the other thing as well is that, you know, you do have to get out of your comfort zone. Yeah? And I know, you know, we are in a society where it's not as hierarchical, absolutely. So just as, you know, the previous generation, my generation, needs to understand you. You're a much more intelligent and much more aware generation. You also need to understand the previous generation because they've gone through the recessions. We've gone through, you know, the GFC. We've had to work through all of that. You haven't had that yet, yeah? You may will one day, but that doesn't mean Armageddon, yeah? It doesn't mean that the world's going to collapse. It just means that you're going to learn something new. So you've got to be prepared that things aren't always going to go your way. Yeah? You've got to be prepared to do it. And then you say, well, you know, I've just got to roll with the punches. Yeah? Does that make sense? Did I answer that okay? Yeah? So that's really, really important. But you've got to be real about things. And if you don't, because, you know, we live in a very consumeristic society, you know, consumerism. You know, we consume and we throw away. We consume, we're kind of changing that now. We're kind of paddock to plate. We don't want to, you know, consume a lot of this. You know, your generation is very humanitarian as well, yeah? So, you know, just take time. Life is not a race, it's a journey, yeah? So you've got to, sorry? Did someone say that? Yes? Sorry?
It's a marathon.
It's a marathon, yes. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, yeah? So, you know, you've got to enjoy the journey. And I have to say that I don't enjoy the journey sometimes. So it's okay to admit that. It's okay to be real about that. But just be responsible in how you say it. And also just make sure that you are learning the lessons and living an authentic life. That's all I would say.
You know what? Oh, there's a couple more questions before.
So I've worked with Accor for 3 years now. Do you recommend staying with Accor? Like, is there a lot of benefits with the company?
Oh, there's lots of opportunities and benefits. Yes. Where are you?
I'm at the Softail, Sydney Wentworth.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. You're with Craig. What position are you in?
I'm a banquets team leader.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Yeah,
so
fabulous
I get
hotel.
what you're saying.
I was EAM there. So I was there in 2001, so it's a great hotel.
Yeah, it's great.
Yes, so Accor, yes, of course, Accor's got, you know, I'll put my Accor hat on. Lots of benefits to Accor. Listen, it's given me an enormous amount of opportunity. And I must say to you as well that I'm at the Mercure Sydney International Airport. It may not be the Sofitel. I've chosen to go there because I work in Wollongong. Yeah, sorry, I live in Wollongong at the moment because my father's, you know, a bit ill, so I sort of travel up and down. It has been and they've given me the opportunity to work close to home, and it's been a fantastic and amazing experience because it's a different development experience for me, because I'm experiencing a different market, and I'm also experiencing different investors and so forth as well. So going back to that commercial manager, it's not only about the badge on the top of the building, it's also about the experience of the actual position. But to your point, lots of opportunities. So we've pipelines, I think another 30 hotels to open. There's another, you know, pretty soon we've just taken over Fairmont, Raffles and Swiss Hotel as well. Swiss Hotel in the city obviously belongs to Accor. So we are expanding into the luxury market as well, but it's not only about luxury, as I said to you before. We're also diversifying in, funky backpacker kind of Joe and Joes that are in Europe and they're coming to Australia. Wow. One fine stay, concierge services and so forth. The benefits, however, so there's lots and lots of opportunity. I have also people that have worked with me just like me that have worked in budget, economy, mid-scale and 5-star. Yep. Yeah. I can work in any other company if I wanted to because I know all of those markets, but I choose not to. The benefits, of course, accommodation benefits, there's training benefits. You can go, there's the graduate management trainee program, there's the Accor executive leadership program, there are hotel management programs. So there's lots of opportunity. I mean, there's one chap, Marty, who's fantastic. He's now sort of cluster manager. He's all of, I think, mid-20s, and he's doing a cluster role with our budget hotels as well. Again, because we want that sort of millennial mindset. So the list goes on, and I can give that to Anthony, but I'm just conscious of.
So the message is
yes,
stay
lots.
there. Yeah.
Stay there. Yes, the message is stay there. Yes, sorry, I got lost in that. Yes,
there was a question up at the front.
Thank you. I have a question about corporate culture because this thing is quite popular in textbook, but I'm not sure how it's worked in real life. And could you please share in your career, how did you witness the difference when you work among different brands? How corporate culture are different among them, among different market segments, and when you want to see different traits in your employees, how did you build corporate culture for certain brand? For example, your current property in Mercure, Sydney.
Yeah, I think, good question. I think, first of all, the company is Accor. So that's the overarching brand about corporate culture. Yeah, so whether you want to call it corporate, yes, corporate culture, and our culture. And our culture is really based on, we have a customer care culture that's called peopleology. Anyone heard about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's really quite unique in the sense, and it's quite what's the word? It's common sense, yeah. But we've packaged it up in something that is really quite funky. I was actually part of the focus group many years ago for that. So we've got the 7 principles. As you may know, people want what they want. People love novelty. People hate to be wrong. When you've got someone in front of you and that guest was wrong. No, you don't want to do that, do you? Yeah. So, but sometimes we do that. Yeah. So we want to catch ourselves out. So I think to your point about corporate culture, first of all, there's an overarching message, particularly in Australia, New Zealand, Asia Pac, that it's about human connection. So our corporate culture is really about human connection. So when we train each other about peopleology, yeah. It's not only about our customers, but it's also about our guests. It's also about each other. Yeah. So we apply that discipline, or we apply that methodology or that philosophy to each other as well. So there is a very open, I suppose, culture when we, apply for roles, or when we advertise for roles. It is open to everyone. Yeah. Yeah. You can move after 6 months from one role to another. So it is quite dynamic. And the reason for that, I've got a general managers conference at the end of the year. So it's a 2-day retreat. But we've opened it up now, not only to general managers, but also to our 2 ICs, so second in charge, and to our key department heads. Yeah. Wow. So each hotel, and that's pretty huge. Yeah. So where it would be, you know, for New South Wales and ACT, there will be, you know, 50 GMs. Now potentially there's going to be 200 delegates, yeah, because, you know, it's obviously for your high potential, you know, talents. But it's that open culture of really opening up the borders, for want of a better word, without being political, opening up the borders and really, really quite an inclusive culture. Now that permeates throughout all of the brands, yeah. Now, overlaid on top of that, we obviously have the brand standards, and Sofitel has 2,500 or almost 3,000 from memory, maybe even more now, brand standards. You know, the Mercure I think has about 500. So there are brand standards that each culture then, that each brand then is overlaid. But as far as the peopleology, the human connection, that is across the board. Yeah. And look, I think peopleology is amazing to be honest, and it really brings to the front what Accor is really all about. Yeah. Right up the back. We'll go right up the back, keep going, and then we'll come back down, and then,
I was just wondering, it's obviously not a sort of standard Monday to Friday, 9 till 5 job. Do you have any advice on how you relax or recharge, especially like your husband's in the same industry? So I could imagine maybe it's a bit hard to recharge. Well, if you have any advice?
I wouldn't suggest that you you know, that you have two businesses. I wouldn't suggest that. So that's, you know, that's temporary, you know. So, but how do I relax? Otherwise, listen, I think if you've got your own hobby, it's very, very important, I think, to switch off. That also happens as well with maturity and also with time. Yeah, very, very important to get your sleep. Very important to sleep. Yeah, if you're a warrior, then, you know, obviously, you know, headspace, meditation and so forth. But what do? Yeah, I do. I sleep pretty well, I have to say, but I don't sweat the small things anymore. So it is a bit of a brain. I believe in, you know, neuroplasticity, which, you know, for those of you that don't know, you should read about it. It's great. You can train your mind. But it is also about, if something is bothering you, to have the courage to speak about it and resolve it. Yeah, and I think these are more life lessons more than anything else. I do believe, and that's something that I haven't done that I need to do. You know, health is really important from a point of view of, you know, being active. Yeah. So it's one thing that I would say to everyone: find, including myself, find the time of the day to be active. Yeah. So pedometers and so forth. That's really, really important. But that's really across all industries. Yeah. As far as ours, and I think particularly for women as well, because when we're talking about, you know, gender equality, and, you know, as you go up the ladder, sometimes the hours could be, you know, a bit unfriendly. They're unfriendly depending on how much you learn as far as management is concerned. I'm the type of manager that and leader that, you know, I try, and I don't mean this literally, but it's about making myself redundant, in the sense that I share my experiences and my knowledge with my team. So they are a very, very resilient team, and they're a very enabled team. So we work together. There is no I in we. So the success of any business is dependent upon a team of people. And that's also responsible as well. So if something comes down, so I'm here today, that my team are not relying, oh gee, Lorraine's not there, so we can't make these decisions. It's not that at all. And that really is the moment of success for you as well, that if you are on annual leave, or if you are away for a certain period of time, or if you move on to a next role, that business unit continues to flourish. Yeah. So therefore your imprint, and it's not about your imprint necessarily, but it's really the imprint of a sustainable business continues. And then you can have your balanced life.
Yeah, that's how it works. Thank you.
Pleasure.
So I think we're going to have to leave it there. If anyone's got any more questions from Lorraine, please come down and ask those. It'd be really, really great. But on behalf of everyone today, thank you so much for coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for sharing your story, and welcome to the LSS alumni.
Oh, thank you very much. You've been a delight. Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. Thank you for those who are on the other side of the screen joining in, and tune in for the next version of the Leadership Speaker Series. Thank you.